Did you know Echoplex has a 24-hour stream? That's right. Check out our 24/7 music stream at echoplexmedia.com/live or at eplex.xyz. Our huge self-submitted local music library plays the best tunes the Bay Area has to offer, and commercial free, well, except for ours, and even by request. Check out the player on echoplexmedia.com or at eplex.xyz. Bookmark it and enjoy it all day. Echoplex is very supportive of our local music scene, and we hope you enjoy the soundtrack they've so graciously sent in for us to play on our network. If you like who you hear, please go check them out. The names of the artists are displayed on the player at echoplexmedia.com and at eplex.xyz.
And let's just spell it out for you. ECHOPLEX. They put me in a fucking magazine.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/EchoplexMedia. Go to echoplexmedia.com/support and you can find tons of ways to support us. My favorite way is the swag shop, but you can make your own decisions when you get here. Joined by two co-hosts this evening. My usual week in, week out, almost every week co-host. What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I got a new pink chair, so now when I swivel my chair around, it'll be awesome and pink. My other chair moved over there, so
that's fantastic. Yep. Who are you?
And Wild Historian Matt appears.
Wild Historian Matt appears. Matt, what's up?
Yeah, I'm Historian Matt. I'm usually on some other shows, mostly How the Tech Are You? So you guys should check that out. It's not a live show; it's recorded, so you can get it on your usual podcast catchers and YouTube. But I'm here
Guess
for the
what
show.
I forgot to do today.
What? Oh, yeah.
Guess what I forgot to do today?
You forgot to upload that.
I forgot to edit and upload it.
Yeah. But I'm here tonight because you're covering a topic, person who I know a little bit about, and I wanted to make fun of him.
Oh, very good. So sometimes we like to go outside of our usual kind of IDW space, but we always like to keep it with somebody who's sort of like, I guess a guru is the only way to really say it, even though there's a podcast that is our direct competition that has that in their name. But
public intellectual.
Public, I'm not sure we would call Tony Robbins a public intellectual. I think guru is a better, he's like a finance guru.
I think he would call himself that.
Well, that's the first rule of public intellectualism, is that you have to call yourself one. So I went around looking and I saw some of his talks from like Dreamforce and all that shit. And I was like, you know what? He's got this podcast where he claims he's giving you a master class in something. And I figured that would be like a more appropriate thing for us to watch. So here's him interviewing. This is Chris Barton, the founder of Shazam. If anybody doesn't know what Shazam is, Shazam was one of the first apps where you could hold your phone up at the bar and it would tell you what the song is. So
does that even exist anymore?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's like used. I think it's now like a service that other applications use.
Okay.
So I have no beef with Chris Barton, although we'll see. we'll see how it goes. Maybe I will have some beef with Chris Barton. He's already starting off on a bad foot with me because I wasn't really aware of him before this. And the first time I'm going to watch him is on with a grifter and a possible or likely sexual assaulter, Tony Robbins. So without any further ado, here's the Tony Robbins podcast, The Power of Perseverance with two rich white guys.
When I came up with the idea for Shazam, I thought, it's going to be, people are going to hold their phone up in the air and then they're going to know the name of the song. And that just felt like magic. It really felt like magic.
It is still, I think.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, how can that be?
I guess it felt like magic the first time that came out.
I mean, it was a pretty cool idea.
As a person, you don't know the person, but I bet you've used the product.
I don't think it was
Shazam.
necessarily an original idea, but Shazam did it best.
Yeah.
How many have Shazam on your phone?
How old is this?
This is I
recording?
don't know. This is it's recently uploaded, but I don't know how old this is.
Okay, because I'm like, probably nobody has it on their phone directly anymore.
Yeah, but what I love here is that these are like the people on the Zoom call. These are all the people he's grifting, right?
Yeah.
Look at this lady in the upper left. I don't know which way to point with the like pink and blue background.
Yeah.
It says, "Grab your NFT now."
Oh, these are the worst.
Must not have been very long. Okay.
What you're seeing on the screen right here is the worst possible blunt rotation. Look at these three people in the top right of the screen, all cheating, sharing one masterclass account. We see you. We see you.
And the guy below just has a random sign that says yes.
That's will you?
Well,
I don't
like-
think there's a yes, no question. I guess so.
Those guys can't even afford to finish their wall, so
I think that's an incubator. I don't know. Anyway,
drywall's not
The man
even
who
that
created this
expensive.
product, when he came up with this product, it was impossible. Everyone said it was impossible. He came up with a product 3 years.
Literally,
before
no one said it was impossible.
7 years before we ever had an iPhone. I mean, literally before there was digital music, he thought of this idea of, wouldn't it be cool if you could
wait, before there was digital music? No. There's been music available in, like, does this guy know about a thing called the compact disc?
Probably not. Probably isn't aware that's digital music.
There was actually digital music on tape
Right,
before
ADAT.
there was digital music on CD.
Yeah, DAT tapes were digital.
Yeah.
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 But most people didn't play. Most people weren't using DAT tapes. For most people,
Yeah,
their
very
introduction
few.
for consumer introduction to digital music was the compact disc, and I swear that came before Shazam.
Yeah, he said 7 years before iPhone, which would be the year 2000, and CDs came out in, I believe, the year 1979. I
Right.
could be wrong. It could
Yeah,
be 89.
most people got a CD player in like the mid '80s. It started to become like affordable.
Okay, yeah.
your phone in the air, hear a song, and in 15 seconds, no matter where the song was playing, be able to know what that song is, access up that song, and be able to make that happen. And he did it. He did it in spite of every obstacle you can possibly imagine. And he ended up selling this business for $400 million to Apple. It's the fourth largest one. 1 billion people have downloaded this app. And today, if you have an iPhone, you can just say, Siri, what's this song? It's built into Siri as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up, give a big hand to the co-founder of Shazam, Chris Barton.
Is that a real audience?
That's what I was wondering. Because they haven't shown an audience here.
It's Chris!
Just the thing on.
They showed an audience on like a Zoom call.
Yeah.
What the fuck
They're
is
making all
this?
that noise.
You know what? I'm more embarrassed for everyone involved than I am mad so far, to be perfectly honest. I don't know how you feel about this, but this is embarrassing.
I mean,
Listen,
how
people-
do you do a motivational speech during like COVID era?
So people on the podcast, you're gonna have to watch the video on this one. I'm telling you, you're missing out a lot if you're not checking out the video on this. This is embarrassing.
They're basically in a studio,
Chris, it's
but
such
with
a
no
pleasure
studio
to meet you,
audience.
A privilege to be with you. You've got a product that most of us around the world all are delighted by. I can probably remember the first time we ever used it. I certainly remember the first time I did. Driving a car, hearing a song while I'm driving, clicking on Shazam and going, oh my God, this song by Pink, Funhouse. This is really cool. And I use music in all my events.
It's funny now the tags for the music are on all the even regular radio stations, so you don't even need it in your car anymore. Which is probably a good thing because you probably shouldn't be opening an app and trying to use it while driving.
I can think of an outcome that would have been
like
great.
you said, you can just ask Siri to do it.
I can think of an outcome that would have been great from his story that I can't say on Twitch.
Okay.
To gather, what is that? We call this, the radio stations and say, what was that song? And now to have this at our fingertips. I want to know, before we get into the journey of Shazam, I'd like to know a little bit about you. Tell us, what it was like growing up, and what do you think created this belief inside of you that says, I can do things people say are impossible?
Yeah. Let's see. I guess
It's called narcissism.
similar to my son, I have.
Well, and
Well,
also,
no, it's called like no one said that it was impossible.
there was
Okay, so maybe like some people said it was impossible, but those people are people who do not understand how digital audio or computers work.
right. There was probably already like a computer system somewhere that could pattern match certain songs. Like,
Yeah.
based on,
So like essentially what they're doing is like fingerprinting the song, if that makes sense, and then just matching like your little clip that you record with your phone with a bunch of song fingerprints to see what's the closest match.
Undiagnosed dyslexia and ADHD, and I had my own challenges of just kind of getting through basic academics. So you'd have to kind of cope and come up with your own coping strategies and find your own, define
Wait a
your
second.
own ways.
Now, you just blew my mind, because didn't you go to Cambridge, and didn't you get a degree? What was your degree in Cambridge?
That was a master's in finance.
In finance.
Yeah.
And you have dyslexia.
Yeah.
That's wild. Tell us how you managed it, how you made it.
I remember when I was an undergraduate at Berkeley, and I remember when I arrived.
Yeah, from the chat, like this guy just claimed that he had the ADHD and dyslexia.
Which classes can I take that? have the
Didn't
least
say he was diagnosed with it.
and so I
Wait, did he say he was self-diagnosed?
yeah, undiagnosed, he said.
He said undiagnosed, yeah. So
Okay.
if he's claiming that, then I'd assume that he means that he was self-diagnosed. He's not saying that he was later diagnosed by any mental professional.
and focuses areas that had the least reading.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's
That's
such a challenge.
wild. So you had this dyslexia. Did it make you more creative then, do you think?
Yes, I teach my son this, and I've read about dyslexia and ADHD, and what's interesting about both of them is that while they make traditional academics a challenge and they make it hard to get good grades, so people like Charles Schwab and Richard Branson are dyslexic. I really believe it gives you superpowers.
That's awesome.
In fact, they call the thinking of dyslexics, they call it big picture thinking, like an ability to kind of see like orders of magnitude more variables at the same time and almost just have clarity about what's going to happen.
Just think about that belief, everybody.
I don't know, like every
That is
time I
not
hear
how I
somebody,
would describe having ADHD at all.
no, he
That's
was
like
describing
literally the
dyslexia.
opposite of
You guys
how
are
I would
talking over
describe
each other
having
a
ADHD.
lot. You guys are talking over each other a lot.
Okay.
All right.
You gonna go?
Well, before we move on, I do want to say, like, what he's describing is not how ADHD works. With ADHD, it is very difficult for me to think about like a system broadly. I can think about like very specific parts of a system, but when I'm trying to think about a system broadly, like many different parts of the system working together, in other words, like when I'm writing code and I have to think about like, how is all of this code working together? So how do I find a bug or solve this feature? That is monumentally more difficult when my ADHD is not has not been medicated than when I am on my medication. So maybe he's talking about like specifically when it's treated, but then I would say like that's other people's normal.
So I was listening to what they were talking about, and I think they were talking about the dyslexia specifically, not the ADHD.
Okay, then I would say he probably doesn't have ADHD then.
I'm as qualified to diagnose him as he is qualified to diagnose himself. So I'm very hesitant.
As am I.
Yeah, I'm very hesitant to do any of that. Matt, do you have anything on this?
Just like he was saying about being a big picture guy, and I find like everybody who claims to be a big picture guy like is full of shit. I don't know how to explain it, but I used to do a lot of stuff with short filmmakers, and particularly worked with a lot of writers. And it was all the writers who said they were, big picture idea people always had like the worst ideas. And the people who were just like, oh, I'm a writer, I like to write, always had like the best concepts. Like, they really did have a good big picture kind of thing. So
yeah. And not for nothing, like in business, when you hear people saying they're a big picture person, it's almost always somebody who's rich, right? It's never like a junior level engineer being like, actually, I'm a big picture engineer. They're like, somebody's like, shut the fuck up. We're having a meeting about something very specific, right?
yeah.
Only your boss's boss gets to be a big picture person.
Yeah.
And they always suck at it too.
And you find its benefit. That's how your life changes. It shifts your identity. Once your identity shifts, your whole world shifts.
Yeah.
So you go to school, and what was your intention? What did you think you were going to do? Were you entrepreneurial? Or?
So no, initially I started at Berkeley as an engineering major, switched out of that to economics and business. And I kind of did a traditional route. I did management consulting in my first years out of college. And it wasn't really on my radar to start a company at that point. Mm-hmm. It was only when I was doing my MBA, I went back to Berkeley to do my MBA, still not realizing that I wanted to start a company. And it was actually in the first week of my MBA program, I was in the computer lab, and next to me was a guy that was 1 year ahead of me in the second year of the MBA. And I said, oh, what did you do before the MBA program here at Berkeley? And he said, oh, I was an Air Force pilot. And I thought, Air Force pilot, wow. And then I said, well, what are you doing now? He said, well, I'm starting a company. It actually ended up going public, that company, a real estate company called Zip Realty. And
was it on the web?
It was an early web, because this is in 2000. This is 1998, so early internet days. Yeah. So
if his company went public in 1998, you know what happened? Line go up, line go down.
Yep.
And I bet his ass it was left holding the bag, and by the bag I mean the bag of money.
Right.
Oh man, this is going to be insufferable.
I said, I'm starting a real estate internet company, and I thought, wow, an Air Force pilot is suddenly starting a company. And I thought, now I have no excuse, because
because he's like, I know I'm smarter than an Air Force pilot. Like, what do you mean now I have no excuse? If you get to be like a pilot in the Air Force, you are an exceptional person, actually. You are
yes.
You don't just show up there and be like, hi, I'd like to be a pilot. They're like, great, here's your plane. You have to,
and
like,
he's up there like, if they're letting this fucking guy do it.
You idiot. You met like an exceptional person before they even started their company. They were an Air Force pilot. Now they're at one of the best universities in the world in an MBA program. The person sitting next to you was already exceptional. Just
you can get.
I'm really starting to agree with Matt here that the guy's just a narcissist.
Great at flying planes, yes. And so it was very inspiring for me, and I kind of thought, wow, you can really just define your own path, and you can, if you just want to do it, you just do it. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm going to start a company as well.
And did you have any idea what kind of company you wanted to start, or did you start something before Shazam?
No, I did not. So
wow, it was your first enterprise.
It was my first company ever. Yes,
wow. But I thought this is supposed to be about perseverance. It sounds like this guy never had to persevere.
Yeah, really.
Where's the perseverance part?
He struggled so hard with the decision to start a company.
He also struggled so hard academically that he ended up at UC Berkeley, like not even out of community college, like straight out of high school. It's like, I struggled academically. Sometimes I got an A-.
I want to know, were his parents rich?
Oh, the answer, yes.
Probably. He also struggled so hard to get lucky with his first company.
Management consultant, just traditional, check in for a job and work hard.
You got to just, keep trying, put your nose to the grind. And, if you fail.
What was the aha moment where you got the idea?
I don't know. I can't help you. I never failed.
Basically, we went through. So I first chose co-founders before we actually knew what business we were going to start.
Oh, you even knew before the company?
Yeah. So we thought, okay, well, let's start a company together.
We don't know what it is, but I'm going to pick the other two most important people in the company without having any idea what we're going to do. How did this guy even succeed? Now I'm thinking he didn't think well, we're going to do something with audio. So I need somebody with experience with digital audio to work on. No. He's like, I got to pick two co-founders. Where's some other rich kids? Who else never failed? Maybe you should have picked the Air Force guy. Air Force guy's like, I'm not working with this dipshit. Oh, this is wonderful so far.
Yours or people you went out and got directly?
No, they're actually friends, two friends.
Okay.
The fourth one that was not a friend. We had to hunt him down.
Yeah, the engineer.
Yeah, exactly, the inventor. But these two, one of them was
the guy who did all the fucking work.
One of them was just a friend from around the city. Both talented guys.
And you're living, just to give everybody context, in the UK at the time.
And so we were living. Well, I was doing my MBA at Berkeley, but then I was doing. Then I went out and did a semester at London Business School. And
so I'm talentless. My two friends are talentless. So we had to find a guy with talent.
In London, doing an internship and so on at Microsoft.
To be fair, though, Matt, if you were going to invent something, wouldn't you first go find an inventor?
Yeah. Somebody who knows the technology or general area that I want to, invent something in,
Like, this guy wasn't that impressive. His mom was only a lawyer.
We were in this mode of, say, we're going to start a company. We have no idea what, but something. And we would literally meet at cafes in London and just brainstorm. We would just throw out ideas, write them down on paper.
What was some of the early companies you considered?
There was the one that I thought about doing that quite seriously for a bit was contact lenses, selling contact lenses and all eye-related care on the web.
Yes.
Again, this is 1998,
Yeah.
so actually having done
Gosh,
that, it would have
could you imagine having that idea? Contact lenses, but on the internet.
I just found that
selling, but on the internet.
I wake up every morning.
Yeah. All right. So get this.
On the
It's
web.
a fucking crazy idea. We have a store, right? But it's online. And this was 1998. Stores existed online. Like, he's talking about it like, this was 1998. No one was doing this. No, that was really big at the time, actually.
I was selling tickets to raves on the internet at that point, for fuck's sake. You were able to sell tickets for an illegal party on the internet. You could definitely sell legal products on the internet to people, yeah.
Was not, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could identify a song with a mobile phone? That was not the breakthrough idea, because actually there were about 6 companies doing that. But that no one's
doing what?
They were all embarked on trying to identify songs with a mobile phone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but
even though there were no real smartphones at that point, right?
Right. This is early days. So
Tony Robbins, how come you're not talking to
a
them?
little startup called eMarker. It was actually a device. That was not a phone. It was a little device you clicked. And then there was one called, I can't remember the names of these kind of companies now.
That's okay.
Music. But anyway, so basically what they were all doing is doing the traditional thing that one would do when you start a business, which is just, okay, here's a business I want to start. How do I go about it? And so the logical thing, working with existing technologies and building something, was to monitor radio play. And so that's what they were all doing. They were monitoring the radio stations. And then with these services, you'd say, I'm listening to this radio station, 105.3.
Right.
And then you would enter that on your phone. And then they would tell you, okay, here's a song that's playing at this moment on the radio. Because that was technically feasible. We know what songs are playing on the radio.
Yeah.
It's not a hard problem to figure that out.
Yeah.
So the breakthrough of Shazam was that I was thinking about that business because it was early days and no one had really taken off yet. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to come up with something like that? But I was taking a class at London Business School called Strategic Innovation, taught by Kostas Markides. And it was really encouraging you to think outside the box about everything, question everything.
Yes.
And I was thinking about
First principles.
business where I would track
Question
what's
everything.
going on in all these radio stations, and it would be similar to these other startups. What could someone do that would leapfrog me, that would just leave me behind in the dust?
Yes.
That's the strategic innovation.
So you thought in terms of your competitor if you were in that business. That's
Exactly.
interesting.
What would just invest all these years building this business? What would just leave me in the dust and just make me irrelevant? And then that was the breakthrough. And I thought,
So he thought about his product
from the air
more.
not from the radio stations, literally in the air. And then you wouldn't have to enter the radio station. And not only that, but it wouldn't just work for radio play. You'd use it in cafes, bars, clubs, movie theaters, everywhere you go, right? Shopping malls,
Ubiquitous.
anywhere you hear a song. Because it's not just radio out there.
Yeah. That's wild. One of the things I try to teach all entrepreneurs is there's always two businesses you're running, the business you're in and the business you're becoming. And in order to be the business you're becoming, you've got to think about what would knock you off. I mean, you actually use that principle on your own. That's pretty awesome. Tell me, so you come up with the idea, you've got some initial partners, you start, as I understand it, to try to ask people, and they all say it's impossible, which lights your fire, which I love. So tell us more about.
But he was just asking stupid people, because if you would have asked me in 1998 if I thought there was going to be a computer program that would be able to identify a song using a waveform, I'd be like, that sounds like, wait, do we have that? That would be I'd assume we had that already. I would assume that it wouldn't be great, right? But I would assume that we had, I would assume that there was a website at that time where you could upload a snippet of a song or whatever, and it would kick back out what that song was. The only, and I don't know if that's the case or not, but we report audio, people don't understand that audio is actually not a lot of data. There's just not a lot there. It's just a waveform.
Yep.
I do think that there were algorithms at the time. And the reason I think that is I'm looking at a paper right now called A Review of Algorithms for Audio Fingerprinting. This one is from 2002, but it references a paper called Fast Sequence Matching in Time Series Databases from 1994. So I do believe that algorithms for this exact purpose existed at least since 1994.
Right. And that paper that you see it referencing was probably building on some other work that was doing something similar as well. It's very, very rare that something isn't building on something before it. Productizing it and making it so it works on your phone actually is the interesting part, because back then you didn't have an iPhone, right? So to make it work on a phone, you would have to have one for a specific, you'd have to have an app for every specific phone. And so that was actually the difficult part. Although it may have just leveraged the mobile web, such as it was at the time. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I think the other issue is you have to deal with noise and stuff, but because they figured out how to fingerprint through noise.
It's just a matter of the closest approximate match.
Yeah.
And removing some of the outliers that don't match.
You don't have to be right 100% of the time for this to be an interesting thing that people are going to want, right? If you get it at the beginning, if you get that 75 or 80% of the time, people are going to think it's magic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and then tell us how you got to your fourth partner, your engineer. Is it even
Avery?
Yeah.
Wait, his fourth partner was the engineer. Actually did the work. What?
And so we're like, oh yeah, we'll just invent this technology. You hold your phone up, and it's pattern recognition, and it will hear the sound over the phone. And these are ancient phones, right? This is in the year. This is in 2000. And it will identify the song. Great. Okay, so now how do we go about doing this? Go onto Google, type in a few things, a few queries, and we start to realize, okay, the people that are really advanced in this audio area, sort of pattern recognition, are basically they're people who have focused on electrical engineering with a focus on digital signal processing, with a focus on audio signal processing.
Yes.
And then among those people focused on audio signal processing, some people had a particular interest in music.
Okay.
And we find these people on the web, they've published papers, done various studies, and they typically had come out of places like MIT Media Lab, or Stanford had a group called the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. And maybe in this program, 2 or 3 PhDs would graduate each year. And with a music PhD, music acoustics PhD. So we go out and we meet these guys, a few of them that we find, just reach out to them. And we're like, we have a top secret idea. You can't tell anyone, but we need to invent this technology that can identify songs on a mobile phone, okay? And they said, I'm sorry, that's just not possible. I know every technology out there. I don't know of any way to do something like that. And the reason is because you're dealing with, in pattern recognition, when you combine 2 core challenges, and one is scale, a lot of music, and then the other one is noise.
Yeah, because you're in a bar, you got people talking and still being and recognize a song at any point in the song too, right?
Any point in the song, and there could be all kinds of audio challenges and so on. You have the phones have vocoders that emphasize the human voice and de-emphasize all other sounds, noise cancellation. Just all these technologies working against you, and it was just incredible. We would capture some.
So
of these
just
sound
run
samples,
the
and they
music
would
in your
barely
database through the same
So
vocoder.
they just had no idea how to do it. We finally found this professor who was kind of famous in this little circle of audio signal processing people, Professor Julius Smith at Stanford. He was famous because he had invented the algorithms behind the Yamaha synthesizers that are out there today in all Yamaha or all electronic keyboards.
Yeah.
And so we went to him and he said, I have no idea how to do this either. But he said, I think it's a great idea, and I'd be happy to be your advisor and help out.
Wow.
And so his first project as advisor was
He says, you youngsters seem like you have a lot of money.
him a list of names. And I said, I found all these names, and they're pretty much, they're all PhDs, mostly out of MIT and Stanford and Berkeley and so on. And I said, we need a co-founder, and we need him to be like a genius. And so he knew all the names because it's a small world. They go to the same conferences. And I just said, can you just rank the 5 smartest guys on this list and just guys and gals?
Yes.
And we're going to go after those people as our co-founder. And I want them to be people that, because clearly they're all very smart, right? They're all PhDs from MIT and so on. But anyway, we said we need them to be like an inventor. Actually an abstract thinker.
Yeah.
And someone that was just going to go down to the core principles and really think about how can we invent this type of technology. And so on that list, we had a little list of the top 5, and number 1 was this guy Avery Wang that had done his PhD under Julius. He had 4 or 5 degrees from Stanford in mathematics and electrical
4 or 5
engineering.
degrees. How old was he?
Well, yeah, I think he's probably still 15 years old now. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, I don't know. He's one of those math geniuses. I think now I don't know how old he is today, but he was a young guy.
You're obviously not a math genius if you can't figure out how old he is today.
So we went to meet him. Actually, he told us later, the only reason he took the meeting with us is because we were referred by this professor.
Right.
But he went out and met us in a little cafe over a burger in Silicon Valley, and we pitched our little deck to him and said, we need you to invent this technology. And he decided it was perfect timing because his own startup was failing. He needed something to do, and he said, why not?
He didn't think it was impossible.
No, that is a problem. Yeah, he actually did think it was impossible.
He still thought it was impossible, but I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, he thought I'd give it a shot. And one problem I faced is that he was...
Did they think it was impossible, or did they think it hadn't been invented yet? Because if you ask me, is it possible to do X? I will tell you, yes, given a certain amount of resources and time, yes, it's possible, no matter what it is. Do you think it's possible to have a robot that can perfectly simulate a human conversation with someone? Yes, that is very much possible, given enough resources and time. So the idea that this guy, like all of these people were telling him, no, that's impossible, seems really unlikely to me. It seems like that's probably not what they were saying. They were probably just saying that is too difficult with current technology, or they were saying it's not possible right now, Or maybe they were saying like, I don't know, but I highly doubt that any of them meant it's impossible.
Right. He was probably having conversations with people about things like compute resources, storage, internet connectivity, phone hardware, like the limiting factors in 1998 for this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it may have been like people saying something like, instead of impossible, it's like, 2 seconds of thinking about this, I do not know the solution to this problem, Yeah. So I'm going to say, I don't know how to do this or something.
He might be just misremembering it, that those people were saying it's impossible, when really they were saying, I don't think that's possible with current technology, or I don't know if that is possible.
Yeah.
Or even this is a very hard problem.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it was possible with the technology at the time because they pulled it off. But I highly doubt that any of them meant it is impossible.
Yeah. Well, but it sounds better if everybody said it was impossible.
Right?
I mean, you can't go to Tony Robbins with people who are like, well, I'm not sure the phones are really capable of this right now. He's going to be like, well, that's not really a good story. Can you crank that up a little bit for us, please? I'm trying to grift people out of thousands of dollars. Excuse me.
Yeah, especially a podcast called Perseverance, right?
It would sound really better for me if everyone were telling me it's impossible to solve the spam problem. But no one's ever actually said that. Whenever I tell people, my service eliminates spam, they're like, oh, is it AI?
Yeah, well.
AI is
That's
just
what
a
everybody
fancy
else
new
does.
thing to solve all the problems.
Like, I don't think I can do it. He was just he was unsure whether it would be possible, basically, and I think he just didn't know if he could keep going, because he was trying for months, working with Julius to invent this. And actually, Julius was such a positive, we can do anything kind of guy.
That's awesome.
That I would organize a barbecue, and then to keep my co-founder motivated, I would say, Julius, I think this is the professor he did his PhD under. Come over here, Julius. Don't you think this should be possible? It's got to be possible, right? And Julius would be like, yes, it does. And I thought it had to be possible. And so Avery would just feel the pressure, because he's like, okay, they all have these expectations. I better invent something.
Well, first of all, in order to do this at that time, there's no Spotify, there's no iTunes. So how did you build the database? Forget even the technology of the noise cancellation and all
Napster
the problems you would have.
Wasn't there CDDB?
Database that could be recognized.
When did CDDB come out?
So, because this is early days, right?
2001. Okay.
So this is basically when we raised our angel round. That was the summer of 2000.
Okay.
And then our venture round a year later. $7.5
And
million.
iTunes came in what, 2004?
iTunes was about 2003 or 4, around there.
And then the phone, iPhone's 2007.
And the App Store 2008.
So you're like 7 years before the phone, 3 or 4 years before iTunes.
Yeah.
And there's no database. In those days, you're buying stuff on CDs, and ripping it? What did you do?
Yeah.
Like a song?
He's not going to tell you that he just downloaded the entirety of Napster and fucking used that as his data set, because that was the biggest database of music in the world.
Yep.
True.
There would be no other way to do this, actually, other than Napster.
Yeah. Look at him smiling like, yes, what you said. I obtained all of that legally. Yes.
Yes,
very much.
We purchased compact discs and ripped them on our laptops.
That is exactly what we did.
I was looking at the stats. They had about 200,000 songs.
Yeah.
In total.
Yeah.
That's a lot of songs.
Yeah.
So how did you get 200,000 songs into a database?
So we were, we also had a limited amount of capital. So
How much did you raise, first of all?
So we had $7.5 million, which is quite a lot of money.
That's a tough raise.
But to do,
that's not that limited.
What we were trying to do, you needed a lot of money, especially when you're starting from scratch, because we had to build our own search engine as well from scratch.
Did you go to VCs for that money?
So they had $7.5 million in 2000.
Somebody said yes.
It was about over 100 VCs. Yeah.
You went. You give me a fist.
What would
bump.
that be right now?
Ladies and gentlemen, over 100 VCs tell them no.
Fake cheering again.
That's a track of the people cheering, because you don't hear any crowd noise at all. Like during the rest of this, like people aren't laughing at their little quips. or anything. He's like, it's like he has it's like my soundboard. It's like when we want a hit of people not laughing at all at Constantine Kissin's stand up, we have this.
Oh, I broke the thing by entering the year 200 instead of 2000.
Oh my God.
So they had essentially 13 million in modern money.
I'm sure there's some exceptions.
Yeah, that really doesn't seem like that limited capital.
100, 200, 500, 1,000 no's, literally, to get to that point. That is the dividing line from reality of turn your dreams into reality or not. And I think I read somewhere, one of the VCs said to you something about no one would ever want to use this or something.
Yeah.
What did they say?
One of my favorite highlights. It was I won't name the VC, but it was a big VC. But yeah, we showed him the demo, and at that point we had an actual demo, and identified a song, and a text message came to the phone, and he said, "I don't see why anyone would ever use that." And I was like, that just motivated me so much, and I just thought. By the way, I like to say, have you ever heard the golden rule? The golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules. Yes. So
that's
VCs make the
how
rules.
witty.
That's right.
And when you're an entrepreneur,
That's an old joke.
100 VCs. You got guys telling it's going to be worth
I
it.
didn't even tell well.
And you get $7.5 million, which is not a lot of money for the level of tech you have to do at this stage. So tell us, how did you even build the database?
Yeah. So basically, what we ended up doing is we first built software from scratch that would run on PCs, and it would basically rip CDs, take the fingerprints
from scratch.
We use fingerprints from music, so it's mathematical descriptions of the sound.
Okay.
Then we also we built that software. Then we hired about 25, 30, 18-year-olds to work 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, putting CDs into these computers, running our custom software.
So he did it the hard way.
Basically typing the name of every song and the album title and the artist, because that stuff is not
all by hand.
All by hand.
That stuff was on the CD at the time.
Yeah.
Those are ID3 tags.
Yeah.
So we could launch in less than 9 months.
So those early CDs, the early CD operating system didn't have enough information, like enough space to hold the full song name. So I do think he's right. It's just they did it the hard way. For sure.
7 million songs.
So it'd be bigger than any music store.
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably a good 6 or 7 times that of the largest record stores at the time.
Yeah, because even those days you went to Virgin or HMV or places like that in London, here, Licorice Pizza, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Tower Records.
Yeah.
So literally this is all done by hand. So then tell us the first version. How long did it take to get that first version? And if I read right, I think you were on Nokia with those little gray screens, and you could barely even text back then, right?
Yeah. You could. I mean, all people did with phones was make phone calls and send text messages. The one innovative thing you could do on a mobile phone was download a ringtone. We all remember that, and be like, oh, and it was a monophonic ringtone. And so we were like one of the first services that you could be, other than making phone calls or sending text messages.
And did you think it was going to just explode? And what actually happened?
Yeah. So I was convinced, because you'd show it to people and they'd say, wow. I mean, it's like magic. They couldn't believe you'd hold this phone up in the air, this very rude, basic phone, and then after a few seconds, a text message would appear at this phone, and it would say the name of the song. You'd show this to people, they would go, wow, that is incredible. And except for that one VC, of course. And so we thought, once we launch this thing, it's just going to take off like a rocket or like wildfire. But the reality is that we had to have
like a wild rocket,
and there was no advertising. There was that wasn't even a graphical user interface. So our model was much like calling 411, which was each time you used it, you paid a small fee, for like 50 cents.
I didn't actually realize that Shazam started off on as like a call a number and you get a text service.
Just getting the word out.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Difficult thing, and it doesn't matter.
That's would be the only way to do it at the time, though, right?
Yeah.
There were PDAs that had like extremely rudimentary app support, but for most phones, yeah.
Well, even I think the phones, some of the more advanced ones had some rudimentary app support, but like you'd have to make like an app specifically for a specific phone. You couldn't there wasn't a lot of
the
interoperability.
handspring visor
Right, but
was the first.
what Matt's saying is there weren't like just basically two platforms that you could target at.
Right. Yeah.
So the only way to make this ubiquitous would be to make it so that you could technically, even though you couldn't get the text back, you could even call the number from a landline. It was just the text coming back would fail. So you were working with, what everyone had, which was a phone that could make a phone call and receive a SMS. And that's it.
Yeah.
How great of an idea or great of a product you have. Sometimes just getting the word out is so much harder than you realize. I worked at Dropbox and it was the same kind of thing. It's an amazing product, but getting the word out was just so difficult. So
Plus, you were so far ahead of the time in terms of tech. Ray Kurzweil's a good friend of mine. He's one of the, I'm sure you know, one of the greatest inventors of our time. And his great skill is being able to tell you 10 years from now what can be done. He doesn't know which tech will do it, but he knows based on compounding where it's going to be. And you have this vision. How did you know that we were going to go to smartphones? How did you know this was going to occur?
He didn't.
Like, what gave you that insight when people are still just using a phone to make phone calls?
I think it was just, I had myself during business school had bought my first mobile phone, regular mobile phone.
Like a flip phone in those days?
A flip phone, yeah. I bought it on eBay. I forgot what kind of brand it was, but I don't think it was even Nokia. But anyway, I bought that and I kind of thought, I could just feel how everyone was getting mobile phones. It was just happening. Do we remember that day when suddenly it went from being, a third of your friends had phones to suddenly like everyone had phones, all very rapidly in just a year or two. And I just thought, all these people are going to be walking around with phones. They need something to...
Yeah, everybody had phones because, you're a rich guy and you only know rich people.
A contributor towards the Shazam concept was like, we're going to do something that everyone can do with a phone, not just your computer, but something that's going with you everywhere you go.
So when you got a Nokia, you do this first exposure. It's hard to get the word out. You thought it would take off. It obviously didn't at the level you'd hoped. Were you able to make money at that yet?
We were struggling. We were really struggling. We had a marketing budget that was part of the $7.5 million, and we made web banner ads, radio ads. We even hired people to walk into bars and just tell people about Shazam.
Yeah.
So we were doing everything you can. Our first market was the UK. And when we launched, we were usable by anyone with a mobile phone. So because it was just all you needed a phone that could make a phone call and get a text message, which was all phones.
Right.
So you didn't need some kind of advanced phone to use Shazam. But we learned that just the amount you spend on marketing to drive awareness to someone was just more than the little bit of money that we made every time someone Shazammed. And so we struggled. We barely survived. We actually had 2 rounds of layoffs. We probably were near bankruptcy for the entire 6-year period between launching in 2002 and the App Store coming out in 2008.
And I read somewhere, I think in 2003 or 4, like 2 or 3 of your partners left the company.
Yeah.
And then I know did you simultaneously, I read that you went to work at Google, you were interested in innovation, and also you just mentioned, what do you call it, Dropbox.
Dropbox, yeah.
Was that happening simultaneously? So you were trying to manage both these things?
So basically, my full-time role, I moved over to Google, and that was 2004 when it was an interesting 2,000-person company, and it's
right before it went public, right?
Right, a few months before it went public, yeah. And then my main role on Shazam was a board member. I was the hardest working board member because I was working 20 hours a week on top of my Google job, and for many, many years, just doing everything I can to try to make this baby a success.
And then you went to Dropbox. Tell me, what are the lessons, if I may ask, what stood out to you from your experience at Google? Did any of that help you later as an entrepreneur in innovation? And then same thing with Dropbox. What did you learn there?
Yeah, I learned so much at both places. I mean, just the way those 2 businesses went about building, taking a core disruptive technology and then making it so addressable to such large numbers of users in a scalable way, and really being at the forefront of technology adoption and technology development. It was just fascinating. I mean, I was.
And then if you're Google, you shut it down.
My job was I was a business development guy, a partnerships guy. I'm not.
As far as I know, Google has innovated 2 things: Google Search and Chrome.
Gmail.
Gmail was just email.
No, I mean, well, the innovation was kind of the interface on the web.
Okay, I'll give you that. Gmail.
What about Google Plus?
No.
Pretty much everything else they bought. Like what else have they developed?
And half the stuff they bought, they shut down.
Yeah, they constantly buy things and then shut them down.
Yeah.
mobile partnerships. I was actually the first mobile partnerships guy at Google, and so I had to do the relationships with AT&T and Verizon, but also European companies like Vodafone and Nokia in Finland and so on. But just being in that environment, I learned so much about how you think as a business long term.
Yeah.
From the founders, the way that the founders at Google would approach everything like it was a clean slate. They would say, right down to, how do we hire people? What do we say in the interviews? How do we motivate people? How do we choose who to promote? Everything, they would just basically throw out all the standard stuff and then start from scratch. And
everything is innovation, even down to how to recruit people.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. And what about Dropbox?
Dropbox is also amazing. I just think that company is just so amazing as an example of how Drew and Arash thought about the problem.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, basically, they were also like Shazam there were many music recognition attempts before. There were multiple attempts at cloud type services before Dropbox, and none of them took off because they were clunky experiences where you had to download a piece of software, and then every time you wanted to upload a file, you would click upload, and every time you wanted the file back, you would click download.
Yeah.
And so they kind of said, okay, we're not going to even think about the cloud problem. We're going to give that to Amazon. Let Amazon do all the cloud stuff. We're going to focus on the front end experience and just make it seamless. And so, the way they did that is basically by conquering synchronization. And synchronization is one thing they conquered.
So Dropbox released in 2008.
Did it?
At the time, WebDAV, which is essentially half of what Dropbox does, had been around for 12 years. So that idea was old.
Yeah, somebody in chat's like, look, they made a fancy rsync.
Yes, exactly.
And not for nothing.
They took a problem that had been solved and they made it easier to use.
And not for nothing, there's a problem I have with the timeline. Then didn't he say they sold this to? Didn't he say they sold Shazam to Apple like not long after the App Store came out in 2008? So how long was he actually? Because he said how long was he actually at Dropbox? Like the timeline seems a little weird.
I don't know.
Anyway, fucking who cares? I'm not here. We're supposed to be talking about Tony Robbins. Maybe we'll take another stab at Tony Robbins in a month because all we're doing is like watching like probably somebody who would have otherwise been a serial killer if they didn't start the Shazam company, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins hasn't said anything of any importance.
We'll have to watch one of his speeches at Dreamforce in a month or something, I suppose.
Yeah.
System so that you can really look like your own folder. And they
also haven't talked at all about
on your computer.
The title of the video, how to turn your crazy idea into a business. There's been zero business advice in this. It was basically just, have an idea and have money.
And get lucky that it works, right?
Step 1, idea and money. Step 3, profit. Oh, wait a minute. It probably never turned a profit. Step 3, sell to Apple. And I don't know. This is also like they titled this Perseverance, but I'm failing to see where this guy had to persevere. What did he have? Oh, I had to go get a job at Google for $105,000 in 2004. Oh, the fucking struggle was real. Like, what does he mean? Where's the perseverance part? The Air Force guy didn't take him. Did he get negged by the Air Force pilot and he felt sad about that? I don't know.
He did say they went through a few rounds of layoffs, so perseverance in terms of, I guess, not shutting the company down.
Right, but was he ever laid off?
I don't know.
No, they didn't lay him. The other founders bounced.
Computer, if you put a file in there, it was in Dropbox. It was in the cloud. No upload or no download.
Yeah, just rsync.
One early Dropboxer once said to me, he said, "Chris, we had 0 steps, and all our predecessors had 1 step: click upload or click download." Right? He said, and Chris, the difference between 0 and 1 is infinite.
Wow.
Oh, that's fucking brilliant.
I always talk about to our team that complexity.
My mind is blown.
Right, you make it too complex. You've took something unbelievably complex but made it so simple for the user. I mean, that seems to be the secret of Dropbox, certainly for Google, certainly what you did as well. I'm curious, how did you keep the business funded when you're having to do layoffs and things and keep it going and there's no real distribution channel? How did you do it? Did you go to more money, more VCs?
That would have never worked, as you
I was
said.
going to say, I don't imagine them giving you any money at that stage.
Yeah, and you would dilute to the point of non-existence.
He's like, well, I was at Google before they went public, and I got some options, you see. And then I was so rich I could just fund this by myself. This is called perseverance, everyone.
This is something that I encourage so many entrepreneurs to think about, is that we found an easier way. I always like to say revenue is like oxygen. You need oxygen to survive. You need to keep breathing. You need revenue to survive as a startup, to bring something in, to pay the bills. You can't just keep relying on funding. And sometimes the revenue can come, the easier way to get revenue is to go after something that might be a parallel to your core business.
Okay.
And so for Shazam, we built a service to just monitor radio stations, because it turns out, isn't that interesting? Because we found out that we had an amazing, highly efficient technology, and there were companies that wanted to know what was playing on the radio. In fact,
Kind of monitor their competition? Is that
well, actually, no. So
Ratings, you idiot. Tony Robbins, ratings. People who are like, how many times is your song, like the people who just a Billboard, where they decide what the Hot 100 is? They probably, the software like this, yes, that should have been your first customer, dude. It's called perseverance. But that's not an unlikely story for something like this, right? You think it might be consumer facing, but then it's like it's a business facing company. That's where your revenue comes from. Like Zoom figured that out real quick. that businesses were their actual customers, not individuals. And in this case, I would be surprised if his first big contract wasn't with like somebody like Billboard or whoever does the charts in the UK or even like non-English speaking countries. Because who cares if you're just matching a pattern of a song? It doesn't, it could be any country, any kind of music.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing like the radio stations would track that stuff, but Billboard or whoever doesn't trust the data coming back directly from radio stations that want to verify by a third party or something. I can see how that could be useful.
You don't have to not trust it to want to have a second like source for the information.
Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't have said not trust completely, but you know what I mean? You want a third party to verify kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I pay out over $1 billion.
So they get paid.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, even smarter. Wow.
And they pay out $1 billion a year to artists for all their royalties.
Yep.
And up until back then, they were estimating what's played on the radio. They had people just listening to radio stations, writing it down, and then listening to 1% of radio play and then projecting that up to 100%. It was very, very archaic.
Wow.
So they ended up licensing our technology, and that brought in millions of dollars in revenue.
Did it make you profitable at that stage, or just keep the doors open?
It didn't make us profitable, but it brought money in. And then actually what we ended up doing is selling that business for a big chunk of money.
Wow.
And that...
what a genius. You're like, hey, we have this thing generating most of our revenue. Let's sell it off, actually. It's called perseverance.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the amount of money was so big that, maybe he's not going to tell us how much money it was. Maybe the amount of money was so big that it was the right move.
Yeah.
Several years.
Wow. The name Shazam, where does it come from? And I heard that a lot of people want to talk you out of it. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So,
it was a genie movie with Shaq or something.
I thought
There's a Mandela
what's the
effect.
one that everyone misremembers?
It's
Isn't it-
Shazam, but it's like with...
I thought it was Kazam with Sinbad.
Yeah, Kazam
Yeah,
with Sinbad. That's the version.
But Shazam was like a superhero too.
Yes.
I forget if it was DC or Marvel or whatever. It was like not Superman, because you can't get away with stealing the name Superman. But Shazam, let's see, he was like the D team of like the superheroes. You get away with stealing his name.
It gets crazier than that, because Shazam is actually a rename from Captain Marvel. But Captain Marvel was like bought out by DC, and they didn't want to use Marvel, which is a competing, comic book company. So they changed the name to Shazam, and they made a decent movie about it.
Yeah.
About him.
But nobody was really going to come after. Well, or maybe he just paid for the rights to use the name, because it's not like Superman or Mickey Mouse or whatever. They're like $80.
Yeah.
I don't even think you would have to, because you're not even in the same business segment. No one is going to confuse you.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
the song, and just felt like magic. It really felt like
It
magic.
is still, I think.
Yeah, and it's like wow, how can that be? And so Shazam actually has been it's a comic series. You know, it's been used. It's actually originally, I think, Arabic folklore. It comes from, and it actually means to conjure magic.
Wow.
And so in the old Billy Batson comic series, this little boy would say Shazam, and a lightning bolt would strike down from the sky, and he would become a superhero.
Yes.
And it's been used in other contexts similar.
Well, it matched your whole identity as a superhero.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
awesome. But people try to talk you out of it, I heard.
Well, so one of my co-founders, this is one of the things you learn for everyone here who has co-founders. You're not always going to agree on everything in life and everything in your business, and that's going to be one of the struggles. And so one of my co-founders, he's an amazing guy. I always like to say he has the productivity of 10 superhumans.
Wow.
But he just said, that name is terrible. He's like, that's a terrible name. We've got to get rid of that, you know. And it wasn't just him, by the way. I had VCs as well. We'd pitch to them, and they have the gold. And they.
I'm gonna guess the guy who didn't want to name it Shazam wanted to name it something like Music Match with a Z.
Yeah, something really emotional. Something that moves you, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But how did you just persisted and then
Yeah, and I was very nervous because at one point after raising the venture money, we hired this big marketing guy who had run all of marketing for Capital Radio Group, which is the largest radio group in the UK. And he said, okay, now we're going to hire an agency and we're going to evaluate what name to use for launch. And I kind of thought, oh no, don't give up on Shazam. I just felt so just emotionally attached to it.
Yeah.
And luckily he concluded, oh, you guys have made enough traction with this name so far, even before launching.
Oh, okay,
with
got it.
partners, we're going to stick with it. And I was like, oh, thank you.
continuity saved you?
Yeah.
Tell me, when did you know it was going to work? When was the breakthrough? Was it iTunes? When did the breakthrough happen for you? And then how did you get tied up with Apple?
Yeah, so the day the App Store launched was definitely the day, and from that day forward.
And you were on it from the very first day.
Yes, from day one, Shazam was an app. In fact, Apple wanted to showcase amazing things that would show off their new phone. Remember, the iPhone had been out a year. So
Right.
during that year, they were reached out to various companies, a small set of companies, some of them gaming companies, for example. And they kind of thought, okay, what are great showcase apps that we can co-develop, actually? Even they provided guidance on what it could look like and so on. And so Shazam was right out the gate at the opening of the App Store. There was Shazam, and they immediately had this concept of ranking apps based on popularity.
Right.
And Shazam, and then the App Store just
They had this concept. Apple invented ranking things by popularity, guys. Amazing idea. Fucking visionary.
grew and grew with more and more apps and more people and more phones. And
As
there
opposed to
Shazam
competing
stayed in
app
that
stores,
top
which ranked things
20,
on file size.
100, it varied by country and time.
File size and
Number
vibe.
one app,
Popular apps.
15 gigabytes.
And so I remember in those first few years, the App Store, Apple would produce reports, and they'd publicly release and say, here are the top most downloaded apps. And you'd see like Google Maps
Right.
and Skype and so on.
Facebook.
And Facebook. And then there was Shazam. And I have to admit, I did reach out to that venture capitalist, by the way. And I said, it turns out people will use this.
Oh, you sure showed him.
Oh, they
Oh,
put in
this
the
is
fake
sad.
cheering, really?
Oh my God, you have to watch the video of this just to see like what's this like. This guy's like on a stick, but it's like a regular. Like, see the top, the just to the right of the center in the top. There's a guy there, like he has one of those setups for his bike where the back wheel is on like a thing that spins, and so he's
Yeah,
like
training stand.
riding his real bike as a stationary bike while they're watching this Tony Robbins thing. There's just a lot going on here. There's a lot's happening here. Oh man, this reminds me of a David Fuller video we watched, but that's a different story.
How did he respond to that?
And of course, like
Did he laugh?
at least 5 of those people were advertising their product.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
One of them was an NFT, so one of them was like, "Here, I've just got ripped off by Tony Robbins. Let me pay it forward and rip you off."
At that time, I was working at Google, and he came out. He said, "Let's have lunch," and we had lunch, and we just laughed about how it's just you can't predict the future, right?
Yeah.
You can't predict the future, and it was great. It was great.
Now, was it a free app originally?
It was a free app, but we had initially had a model where you could only use it 5 times a month, and if you wanted to use it more, then you had paid for a premium version of Shazam.
Oh, I see.
So that was one of our many iterations of business models. I mean, Shazam must have gone through. Shazam innovated more on business models than it did on technology, almost.
And so did you, how soon
Freemium isn't an innovation.
the app was taking off, how soon before that converted into monetization? Then?
Remember when you were a kid and they'd send you the thing with all those CDs and you could get like 20 like all these CDs are free and then you got to start paying for a CD a month or whatever? That's the innovation he had.
So I invented matching music. You know what I also invented? Samples. Free sample, that was mine.
Drug dealers were like, hey kids, first one's free. Like this is the fucking model.
Well, remember when AOL would send out the floppy disks and everybody would just overwrite them and just use them as regular disks?
Yeah, but they had 40 hours of free AOL on them. What do you think? It's the fucking dope man from an after school special model.
Yeah.
I still have one of those AOL discs where I tore off the label and wrote something else underneath it.
We're doing it for free initially and so forth.
Yeah, well, I mean, so
I found it recently. It had some video game on
it's
it.
just that they would change over time. I mean, initially it was pay per use on text.
Okay.
Then there were licensing models, which I skipped over, by the way.
Okay.
During the survival years, the 6 survival years, where we had B2B businesses and licenses, we also licensed Shazam. So there were like versions of Shazam that we preloaded on Motorola phones and Samsung phones.
Okay,
and
got
so on.
it.
So that was a licensing model per phone. Then the app launched in the App Store, and then we had this sort of certain percentage of paid users that we had. And then actually, people were starting to download a lot of iTunes music. We actually became, I think, the #1 affiliate of iTunes downloads. $300 million a year of music downloaded on Apple iTunes.
That's good, man. But that's incredible. That's amazing.
Bring up the fucking Zoom call.
So
This is a man with a powerful
at what
clap.
point did Apple approach you, or did you approach Apple to say?
I don't get why they put in the
And did you
cheer
have any-
track. Like that's his thing is he has to hear cheering.
He would melt if they spoke for long enough and he didn't hear cheering. He would melt like the Wicked Witch of the West.
Any sense that you were going to be able to sell it for $400 million?
So, yes, I mean, I think I would say that was within our target based on the venture capital round.
How much had you raised at that point to keep the company going?
We had raised actually close to 140 million. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So when you raise
better
that
get
much,
400
you
million.
need to make
Yeah.
sure you sell for a big price tag to keep everyone happy.
Yeah. And did Apple approach you? Did you approach them? How did it come
Well,
about?
the best, they say many of the best acquisitions are that come out of close relationships.
That's right.
And there's no doubt that
Proximity.
Shazam had a close relationship already. I mean, for years, when Apple would release new versions of its OS for iPhone and so on, they would make sure that Shazam already was up to speed right for the release of the new OS.
That's just called being a developer.
Worked very closely with them on optimizing the experience, the flow-through experience to the iTunes download because we were such a big affiliate driver for them. So there were many things we were doing with Apple already, and we had a very close partner relationship. Oh, also, by the way, we powered Siri. So when you use Siri to identify a song, that was Shazam, and that was a commercial relationship between Shazam and Apple.
What year did that start happening? Because I only started using that like a year ago myself.
No, that was a few years ago. That was before it was Apple bought Shazam. So Apple bought Shazam in 2018.
Oh, okay. I had been mistaken about the year Apple bought Shazam.
Another example of the technology's there, but a lot of people didn't know to use it. They use Shazam, but not to use Siri in that way.
Yeah.
So you're already integrated to a great extent. You're already there. How did the price come about?
So we worked with a top tier investment bank for the road show of the M&A process, Goldman Sachs, who did an amazing job. And they're just incredible. They just opened the door to all the big decision makers at all the big companies. So as you might imagine, we went through a process where we were having confidential conversations with a lot of the largest technology companies that would be good fits with Shazam.
Right.
And I think ultimately the fit between Apple and Shazam was the strongest. I mean, Apple cares deeply about music. They've always been the lead.
Part of their DNA.
It's part of their DNA. And iTunes, I think at one point, iTunes represented 80 or 90% of all digital music in the world.
Yeah.
And obviously they had Spotify as a real competitor now in streaming music, but Apple Music is definitely up there as the other leading service.
Yes.
And so it was just an excellent fit between. And then the other aspect that was an excellent fit is that fortunately Shazam had always been obsessed with simple, beautiful experiences that people loved, and we had very high ratings in the App Store. People love Shazam, and they
I
love-
remember
they just
early
love it.
Shazam.
And
That is
fit
not
very well with the
accurate.
user experience focus of Apple as well.
1 billion downloads.
Simple maybe, but not beautiful.
That was announced years ago, so it would be like north of that by now. Yeah, it's exciting.
What an exciting field. Tell me, what did you experience when you sold the company? Was there excitement? Obviously,
Money.
Was there any sense of loss? Was it a dream fulfilled? And did it change your life in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it was such a wonderful outcome as an entrepreneur because it is your baby, and I was
Especially when everybody
obsessed
told you it was impossible.
Yes, I know. So it was so satisfying to see.
Everybody told him it was impossible.
Use it, and the awareness. Is
Everyone
incredible.
says it's impossible.
Telling Dan and Angie, I remember going into like a grocery
Everyone
store, and
says
then
it's
suddenly
impossible
right in
to
front of me in
sell
line, the
contacts
person said, "What's that
online."
song?" And the person behind the counter is like, "Get out, Shazam!" And this whole interaction is going on right in front of
very
me.
cool.
And those kind of moments are just so satisfying to
so
see that in
satisfying.
the wild.
All right, get this. My startup idea.
And then for ultimately,
restaurant.
When you care so deeply about this baby that you're so obsessed with, and then it ends up where it ends up matters. And the fact that it ended up with Apple made me so happy.
Yeah.
Apple they actually made Shazam. The first thing they did is remove all the advertising. We needed advertising.
Yes.
That was the last of the business models that we got to. And it ended up becoming our primary revenue stream because we had to survive. But Apple.
Advertising was their last one?
And then the app became even cleaner and faster.
I would have thought that would have been their first.
And it just fits so well with Apple, the company. So I was delighted from day one that that's where it ended up. And then finally I could stop obsessing with Shazam. I don't call Apple and say, now you need to change this, you need to change that.
Yeah, they keep continuously improving anything.
This is the kind of guy who might have called Apple and told them that they were doing it wrong, actually.
Life radically, and what are you doing today? Like, what's your what?
Nothing.
So many entrepreneurs. I was fortunate enough to sell a company
Buying an $800 sweater.
which is yours, but a VR company, and they're really doing some nice things to it. So I know that sense of satisfaction. But on the economic side, some people's lives are really changed by it. Some people aren't much. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they got to start the next thing. I know some entrepreneurs is like, no, I'm just going to go enjoy my life for a while.
Yeah.
What's your life like right now? And what are you doing with your life? What's fulfilling for you?
Yeah. So I would say I'm a little bit of a hybrid of those two.
I just described.
But yeah, definitely. So it was nice to have a financial outcome, and it was a good one. It was a good outcome, definitely.
Great one.
So that gives you the financial freedom to choose what you want to do. I love to be able to spend a lot of time with my son, who
He's here. I saw him.
Yeah.
13.
13, and like me, he is dyslexia. He got all my bad genes: dyslexia, ADHD.
Well, maybe they're your good genes, your superhero genes.
Right, exactly. So
I'm going to see what he's going to create.
As far as I know, dyslexia and ADHD are not genetic.
He calls it the butt chin. He's like, oh.
Tell him that's a Superman chin.
At least we have not determined that they are genetic.
Learnings, and it's really working. These are your superpowers, and if you can get just like Richard Branson and Charles Schwab.
All right, kid, here's your superpower. Your dad's a millionaire.
Tens of millions.
Entrepreneur. So I love putting a lot of time into that, spending time with my son.
That's beautiful.
I am incubating a startup because I wanted to start a new company, but I wanted this one to not be nearly as high pressure, but still be meaningful impact. So this is impact-driven startup. Is
it impossible?
Well, it's going to be very challenging because I definitely love the technically challenging
I
aspect.
figured that.
So it is.
It's an impact-driven startup. We make
and it's and basically my
impact
goal is
drivers.
to see if I can prevent
I was about to say.
swimming pools using cameras and computer vision.
We make sledgehammers.
So that's the idea. So
Connected to the internet. We sell them on the internet.
Alarm, except it sits in a swimming pool. And then the way you compare it to a smoke alarm is that you don't ever think about your smoke alarm. You don't come home and turn it on.
Yeah.
Say, is the smoke alarm on? It's just always on, always there in case a fire starts. And sadly, drownings are something that occur every year in swimming pools.
This is actually a really good idea, what he's talking about right here.
Of accidental deaths for
Computer
children in the
vision
United States, even
pool
exceeding car
monitoring.
accidents, gunshots, poisonings.
Wow.
Is that amazing? And
Insane.
yeah, so basically this startup is called Guard, and the goal is to think in a similar kind of way of like, how can we think in a disruptive technology way,
I like the
but
idea.
also
A
a
plus.
very simple experience. That's key, very simple.
Same thing again, yeah.
Yeah, so that it's easy for people, that you don't have to
Complex in the background, but simple for the
but
person.
simple for the user. And just suddenly, if God forbid, someone starts drowning, and it could be adults as well. I mean, one of famous adults, one of William Shatner's wives drowned. One of Michael.
Oh, Shatner killed her.
I think cousins drowned or something.
Yeah.
If that were to happen, this would recognize the event by using computer vision, much like a self-driving car recognizes someone crossing the street.
I mean, some do
Very, very
sometimes.
sophisticated recognition of visual events.
And it makes an alarm. Is that what occurs?
And it set off alarms all over the house and yard, and then because it turns out that in most drownings there's actually someone home. It's just that it's silent. A drowning is a silent event. In the movies, people say "help, help," but in reality, underwater.
It'd be interesting if this is my crazy thought. It's completely wrong, but it'd be interesting if there was something in case someone's not there that's released into the water that they could hold on to.
That would be the next step. Yeah,
That would be an interesting piece, so that they could save themselves in the moment. That
Yeah.
type of thing.
No, because you don't fire. If somebody's drowning, don't fire a projectile at them from a computer. Like, no.
Well, I mean, you could toss them a lifesaver
really.
Right, but if you
with
like,
a light lob.
So, like-
not like a
Right.
not like a disc gun that would just like beam
well,
up
hold
right
on.
in
Like
the
when
face with it.
adults drown in a pool, it's almost like it's a lot of times it's because they like crack their head on the fucking bottom of the pool or some shit like that, right? It's not for lack of being like if they could reach the surface or whatever, they could just crawl to the shallow end of the pool. Like when you know what I'm saying?
There could definitely be something going on where a lifesaver could help them, though. I don't think that's a bad idea. It might not save them, but it probably won't hurt them.
Friends, the people that I love, my family and friends, that you just realize that the basics in
I'm
life.
just imagining the demo all like the style of that Silicon Valley show where like there's a real person drowning in the pool and then this fucking like weird machine just drops a lifesaver onto the top of the deep end and it's just floating there. And this person in the pool is like, I don't know how to swim.
And the lifesaver just slides off and lands in the pool.
So this guy's idea is great. The alarm is what the alarm is the alarm is what's going to save people.
Yeah.
I have a better idea, actually. My idea will fully solve the drowning problem. When you're not using your pool, what my idea does is it's a very large freezer that just freezes your pool solid. And then when you want to use your pool, it's a very large electric stove that we put underground that will heat up and melt your pool back into liquid water.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a second fence in your backyard, which is what most people have.
No, it's I'm in the planning phase. Right now, the biggest problem with it is that it is monumentally expensive.
I thought you were going to say like whenever this alarm goes off, it just like very rapidly drains the pool. So people can't drown because there's no water in the pool anymore.
That's actually
There
not
can't be
that's
a problem with that
Flinging
at
the
all.
water into the neighbor's yard.
Matt, you're being too practical and you're not using enough electricity, all right?
Yeah. Needs more freezers.
Flash freeze your pool. Yeah, I should do that.
Yeah. That's what I'm going for. Just a very large. Actually, innovation number 2, use the same heat pump that pumps the air out or the heat out into the atmosphere to freeze your pool. Use that same one in reverse to pump heat back in. There you go. I just saved you like a couple dollars out of the multiple thousands of dollars it uses just to do one cycle.
That's beautiful. Well, we're going to go for 3 quick questions. Becky Blake, Team 7, give it up for her, ladies and gentlemen.
Nope, we're not going to do but the Zoom stuff. We got to include this.
Son, I would let you use the pool, but it costs $4,000 to unfreeze it.
Her innovation, a homeowners association.
Becky, where are you in the world? Where are you in the world?
I'm in San Francisco.
San Francisco, everybody, give it up for her. What's your question, Chris?
No, we're not going to do the questions. This is as good a place as any to
No.
end the podcast. What did we didn't learn anything about Tony Robbins, so we're going to have to take another stab at Tony Robbins here. We're going to have to watch one of his like obnoxious fucking Dreamforce talks or whatever, I'm afraid.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't know if we can do it. but Tony Robbins did like a really bad TED Talk.
Oh,
I don't know if
think
we can show TED Talks.
well, the problem for the main show, they're not long enough. I just don't generally use TED Talks, but I think like I'm telling you, you know how they have those like sales and marketing events where they like have all these people come in and like give you a talk about sales. We'll just find one of those, and I want to maybe I bet it would be easy to find him at Dreamforce because that's like the big one,
probably.
But yeah, we didn't learn anything about Tony Robbins. This was supposed to be about Tony Robbins, but we learned about the guy from Shazam who I picture at a dinner, like a dinner event with 3 or 4 of his rich friends all comparing business cards right now for some reason.
I mean, he's not bad like a lot of the people we cover, but he's just another one of those like rich, successful white guys that won't admit that like their wealth came from mostly luck.
Yeah.
Like right place, right time kind of. And you had money to begin with.
And he didn't even bring up anything about his family or growing up or whatever. I wouldn't necessarily guess that his family was like fabulously wealthy, but the story he tells, the track he was on was certainly of like middle class, upper middle class or higher, like just his trajectory.
Yeah.
There are people who were on that trajectory who weren't, but those people were the exception, not the most common ones. We didn't, I wish we would have learned more about Tony Robbins. What we did learn, is that he will he will melt if he doesn't hear, applause. And so he has like fake applause, during his podcast. And then like, I don't know. What do you think each of those people that was on that Zoom call like paid for either the Zoom call itself or the program they were in?
Over $1,000, definitely.
I mean, a lot of them were desperate to advertise, maybe make up some of that money.
Like, if only I could sell this NFT, I could pay off this dumb course I took.
It really does make me wonder, though, like when you're watching a talk by Tony Robbins and you hear all that applause, is that all just fake injected applause?
No, he's
like
in
all of it.
No,
has he ever not had fake injected applause?
HK, when he talks at these Dreamforce events, there's like 10,000 people in an arena.
Yeah,
sure, but I'd imagine he probably uses it for any time his audience is less than that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. Listen, this guy's a big draw. I'm not gonna like. People will get excited to like hear him give a talk. He's just a grifter and possibly or likely like a sexual assaulter, from what I understand. It's just that, yeah, I'm not denying that people get excited to go to his events or whatever. And I wish I would have picked something else, but I was like, well, I thought we were gonna get more Tony. But all we learned about was the inventor of Shazam. And with that, I'm not going to put this kind of pressure on Matt. I'd be like, Matt, can you read this show out? He'd be like, no. HK, you want to read the show out?
Yes. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can check us out live on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. Right after the show, we play a song and then go into red light. So if you're only ever listening to us on the podcast, you're missing a lot of that content. So if you have the time, come by, check us out. If not, keep enjoying the podcast. If you want to find our other shows, they're available on echoplexmedia.com. And if you want to help support us, you can donate on Patreon. That's patreon.com/echoplex. Or you can buy our merch in our merch store, eplex.store. This is Boomers by Periscope.
You recall
If you like what we're doing at Echoplex and aren't into Twitch, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/Echoplex. For $5, you can get every show from beginning to end sent to you as an MP3, even the stuff we bleep out because it's too spicy for Twitch. Echoplex would not be where we are today if it wasn't for the community support we receive. Find out all the ways you can support the show at echoplexmedia.com/support.